America. The word itself held a melody, a promise whispered on the wind. It spoke of opportunity, of education, of a future brighter than the midday sun. I, Elena, had dreamt of this moment, the moment my feet touched American soil. The air itself felt different, charged with possibility. I clutched my acceptance letter to the University of Chicago, my ticket to a world where I could study the secrets of the mind, where I could become a psychologist. My English was perfect. I had practiced for months, years even, poring over textbooks and mimicking the sounds of American movies. The visa interview had been a breeze. I was ready. My parents, their eyes shining with a mixture of pride and worry, waved goodbye at the airport. This was it. My chance. Our chance. The plane soared into the clouds, leaving behind the familiar poverty and limitations of my small village. I was determined to succeed, to make my family proud, to build a better life for us all. America, with its towering buildings and bustling streets, seemed to hum with the energy of dreams being realized. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Pure, unadulterated hope. The apartment was small, cramped even, but it was ours. We shared it with another family, their laughter and the scent of unfamiliar spices a constant presence. My parents had pooled their resources, every last peso, to send me here. They believed in me, in my dream. But the reality of life in America, the cost of tuition and rent, hit us like a physical blow. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, a crisp white envelope that felt heavy with disappointment. My scholarship application had been rejected. My parents, their faces etched with concern, tried to hide their despair. "Don't worry, Mia," my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "We'll find a way." But I saw the truth in their eyes. Their savings were dwindling, their hope fading. The weight of their sacrifice pressed down on me. My dream, their dream, seemed to slip through my fingers like grains of sand. Desperation clawed at me. I had to do something, anything, to ease their burden. I scanned the classifieds, my heart sinking with each passing line. Jobs were scarce, the competition fierce. Then I saw it. Waitress needed. No experience necessary. It wasn't psychology, but it was a lifeline. The diner was a greasy spoon, a relic from another era with its checkered floors and red vinyl booths. The air was thick with the smell of frying bacon and cheap coffee. My uniform, a too-tight polyester dress and a flimsy apron, felt like a costume, a symbol of my defeat. The other waitresses, hardened women with tired eyes and weary smiles, warned me about the boss, a man named Tony. "He's a real charmer," one of them said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "A real prince." Tony was short and stocky, with a greasy comb-over and a permanent scowl etched on his face. He barked orders, his voice a harsh rasp that grated on my nerves. He flirted shamelessly with the customers, his eyes lingering a beat too long on their chests. And he stole our tips. Every night, he'd skim from our earnings, his grubby hands dipping into our pockets like a thief in the night. I worked long hours, my feet aching, my spirit slowly breaking. I was invisible to the customers, just another face in the background of their day. They didn't see my exhaustion, my fear, my desperation. They didn't see the dream that was slowly dying inside of me. And then, one day, Tony fired me. He accused me of stealing, of shortchanging a customer. It was a lie, a blatant attempt to avoid paying me what I was owed. I left the diner that night, tears streaming down my face, the taste of despair bitter on my tongue. The Blue Moon Diner was a step up from Tony's greasy spoon. The clientele was a mix of college students and young professionals, the atmosphere slightly less oppressive. My co-workers, mostly other Latina women, were kind and welcoming. They understood my struggles, the sacrifices we all made to be here. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to hope again. Maybe this time, things would be different. The new boss, a man named Richard with slicked back hair and a charming smile, seemed almost too good to be true. He complimented my work ethic, my English, my smile. He offered me extra shifts, a chance to earn more money. I was grateful, relieved even. But his attention soon turned predatory. His compliments became increasingly personal, his gaze lingering on my body in a way that made my skin crawl. He started accidentally brushing against me, his hand lingering on my lower back, his fingers grazing my arm. He made lewd jokes, his eyes glinting with something dark and unsettling. I felt trapped, suffocated by his unwanted attention. I needed this job, needed the money to survive, to send home to my family. But the price I was being asked to pay, the constant fear and humiliation, was slowly chipping away at my soul. The restaurant industry, a world of long hours, low wages, and even lower expectations. A world where women, especially immigrant women like me, were seen as disposable, interchangeable. We were the backbone of the industry, the tireless workers who kept the plates spinning and the customers happy. Yet, we were also the most vulnerable, the most easily exploited. I thought about reporting Richard, about telling someone about the harassment. But who would believe me? A nobody, an undocumented immigrant against a successful businessman. The fear was paralyzing. The fear of losing my job, of being deported, of letting down my family. I felt invisible, voiceless, trapped in a system designed to keep me silent. The dream of studying psychology, of helping others, seemed like a distant memory, a faded photograph of a life I might have had. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. The weight of it all, the financial burden, the constant fear, the casual cruelty, threatened to swallow me whole. I felt like a ghost, a shadow moving through the world, unseen, unheard. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months. The money I sent home was never enough. My parents, their voices strained during our weekly phone calls, assured me that everything was fine. But I heard the unspoken truth in their silences, the worry etched between the lines. They were struggling, and I, their daughter, the one who was supposed to save them, was drowning in my own helplessness. Richard's harassment escalated. He cornered me in the walk-in refrigerator, his hands grabbing at me, his breath hot on my neck. I pushed him away, my heart pounding in my chest, my voice a choked whisper. "Don't touch me." He laughed, a cruel, humorless sound, and told me not to be difficult. He said I should be grateful for his attention. That night I went home and cried. I cried for my stolen innocence, for my shattered dreams, for the future that seemed to be slipping away with each passing day. I cried for my parents, for the burden I had become, for the promises I couldn't keep. The weight of it all was crushing, suffocating. I felt broken, defeated. The other waitresses, my sisters in suffering, rallied around me. They shared their own stories, tales of exploitation and abuse, of dreams deferred and dignity denied. We were not alone. There were others, countless others, trapped in the same vicious cycle. Their stories, raw and painful, ignited a spark of anger within me, an anger that refused to be silenced. We whispered amongst ourselves, our voices low but determined. We shared tips on how to avoid Richard's unwanted advances, how to protect ourselves. We talked about our rights, about the power of speaking out, of standing together. The fear was still there, but it was slowly being replaced by something else. Something stronger, something that felt like hope. We were not just waitresses, we were warriors, survivors. We were women who refused to be defined by the men who sought to control us. We were women who would no longer be silenced. We were women who would fight back. The whispers turned into murmurs, the murmurs into a chorus of defiance. We started small, refusing to be alone with Richard, documenting his every move, every inappropriate touch, every lewd comment. We reached out to other women in the industry, sharing our story, urging them to break the silence. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but we were no longer paralyzed by it. We found strength in our shared experiences, in the knowledge that we were not alone. We found power in our collective voice, in the realization that even in the shadows, we could make a difference. We may not have had the money, the power, or the privilege of the men who sought to silence us, but we had something they could never take away: our dignity, our resilience, and our unwavering determination to fight for a better future. The dream of becoming a psychologist, of healing others, was still alive, but it had taken on a new meaning. I saw now that the fight for justice, for equality, was a form of healing in itself. It was about empowering others, about giving voice to the voiceless, about creating a world where no one had to suffer in silence. The journey had been long, arduous, and at times unbearably painful. But through it all, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned that even in the face of adversity, even when stripped of everything else, the human spirit has an extraordinary capacity to endure, to resist, to hope. The dream of studying psychology, once so close, now seemed far off, a distant shore I was determined to reach. I knew the road ahead would be long, the obstacles many, but I was no longer the naive girl who had stepped off the plane all those months ago. I was a survivor, a warrior, a woman forged in the fires of injustice. I would continue to fight. I would fight for myself, for my family, for all the women who had been silenced for far too long. I would fight for the right to dream, to hope, to live a life free from fear and exploitation. The American dream may have been tarnished, but my spirit remained unbroken. My journey was far from over, it was just beginning.